Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a guest for you today, Kevin Cahill, coming out of Canada. And he is a change management specialist, which we'll hear all about what that is today. And he's learning to manage change in a world of disruption and overwhelm. It's going to be talking about organizations, culture. And so I'm very happy to welcome Kevin to the show. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's an absolute
Mhm.
privilege and an honor.
Yeah. So start off by talking about, what you do and how you got started and how the audience can benefit from your expertise.
Wonderful. It's been a long journey, and it's one, it really started probably even before I was born. The My focus today really is on change, and it's the change that all humans go through. We up in Canada have four very distinct seasons, and I really partner human change along with those same seasons, the seasons of life. We all go through life, and everything that we do is the raw data, the background, the information that is teaching us how to prepare for change. Because eventually there is going to be that one moment, whether you lose a job or go through a breakup or a bankruptcy or lose a business, and you're thrust into it. You have no control over what is happening to you. And your whole focus is, how do you get through change? How do you get through the suffering that comes with change to be on the other side, where you eventually have to find the joy of the suffering? Yes, you went through that horrible breakup, but now you're on the other side and you have a new partner. Or you lost your business and you were forced into bankruptcy, but that forced you to follow your dreams and follow your passions. And now you're finally doing something that fills up your soul. But the whole part of change is maturing and serving. Because if you don't go and help others, then what was the point of going through the pain in the first place? And that's what we work with organizations and individuals. I love when individuals come to me and say, the worst possible thing ever happened, because the first thing that pops into my mind is, I'm so excited for that individual to see what newness will be birthed out of the disaster.
What a wonderful introduction. And so what was going through my mind through, because I know the audience. And so one thing that is quite interesting is, I've been reading these sociology books and it talked about, like today we're past the industrial and we're like in information, we're talking about AI and robo taxis and all of this. And, you know, in the agrarian age, we had to hunt and kill for our food. We had to find our own water. So my question to you is, if our ancestors were doing this, like we're adapting to the different seasons, weather unpredictability, you could get killed. Why today are we so afraid of change, and why do we have so much trouble adapting to change? Like, getting fired or, getting dumped or these things, why are they such a big deal?
Well, the simple answer to that question is rooted in fear. And regardless of how many hundreds of thousands of years one might go back in the history of humanity, we are all still programmed by our prehistoric amygdala. At the end of the day, it's flight or fight. And I do believe that those ancestors, the great stories through time, the major religious texts for every religion, they all have the same message: is, I was in the gutters of life, I was screaming out to the heavens above, and then all of a sudden I got silent and an idea came to me and I kept moving. So I do believe that the story of survival of humanity is always rooted in overcoming fear and understanding that the root of fear and what is keeping certain individuals in essence paralyzed, preventing them from moving forward. Once we understand the concepts of fear and how to work with fear, and how to be able to move through with fear, then we have that opportunity to manage change. No one likes change. Everyone hates change. No one likes talking about, the worst case scenario. Most people would rather, completely numb out with alcohol or drugs or video games or TV or shopping than actually look in the mirror and understand that, we are a changing being. I always think that, here we are, we're sitting on this gigantic rock that's been around for trillions of years, hurtling through space at a ridiculous speed, and you and I have no control over that at all. And one of the, for me, whenever I start to get too caught up in myself, I will take that step back and I will appreciate the smallness that we are in the greater scheme of things, and understanding that no matter what I do or what decision I'm going to make, that rock is still going to keep spinning. And there's nothing I can do to prevent that. And I think that, everyone through the history, if you read any motivational text, or regardless of how far back, I was actually just talking this morning about Mortimer Adler. He coined the whole person concept. And everyone has that same story. I lost everything, and then I kept moving forward. And that really is that true benefit of being a visionary. In the past, we would call these people prophets, or we would call them visionaries, or we would call them truth tellers or soothsayers. Well, all those people really were individuals who understood fear and kept moving forward despite it.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. And the thing is, what's interesting is that you talked about evolution, and so, technology and society and progress has, like, we're still with our reptilian brains. We have our emotional brains, and then we've got our mammalian brains, and so, which is interesting. So the next question is this idea of ego and status. We invent things such as money and status, and all these things that and talk about the dichotomy between this and change, because a lot of it's like, for example, losing money on an investment, or like I said, getting fired or getting downsized or losing your company. These things that happen, and then in society we look at it upon it as shame, and talk about the dichotomy between social conditioning and why we need to have change.
And in all honesty, that's exactly how I got to be where I am today. And to give, some of the Coles Note version is, I grew up fat kid with a stutter. My dad was disabled. He was crushed by an elevator, working as an elevator mechanic. I grew up with a disabled dad. Everyone made fun of me. And when it came to choosing where to go to school, I decided to move as far away as possible, because I wanted to start fresh. I wanted to start a new life. And I wanted to in essence, run away from who I was. And I followed that quote unquote American dream of swifter, stronger, higher, faster, more money, bigger houses, fancier cars. But I do believe that the universe, and regardless of an individual's religious affiliation or beliefs, regardless of whether we call it God or not, there is this higher power that is guiding us along a path. And I love the movie, The Wizard of Oz, because at the end of the day, Dorothy is just following that yellow brick road, and she's meeting the worst parts of herself en route to an illusion. And once she finds out that it's just an illusion, she has the power to go home. And that was me. The universe, first it was a silent whisper and a silent nudge, and then it was a silent punch and a silent kick. And eventually it was a silent sledgehammer over the head after, smashing my head on concrete, major post-concussion syndrome, and then being diagnosed with cancer. I finally surrendered, and I stopped that chasing of ego, and the concussion led me into bankruptcy. So here $1 million in assets overnight was, probably $500,000 in debt. and I just lost it all. But it was that one moment where I finally surrendered and I gave up trying to control the outcome, because all I could control was my mindset and who I was on a daily basis. And it was in that particular moment and through that journey that I really looked back and I saw all of the different seasons of my life. And the universe was trying to show me, trying to tell me, and I wasn't listening. And I was defiant, in essence, defiant of the universe, pushing through, wanting more status, wanting more ego, until finally I was forced into giving it all up. And I think that that happens in our world so often. We always see these, we read the stories, we see the stories, every single Disney Pixar movie, they all follow the same pattern, the same Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, right? We're chasing, chasing, chasing. And then as soon as we stop chasing, then that's when the universe tends to provide. But a big part, and that was again a lesson I had to learn, is if I do not share what I learned in the gutters of life, the universe has this funny way of just throwing you back there and testing you and finding out, Kevin, did you really learn the lesson? Or are you just pretending that you know the lesson because you want to be able to move forward? And we're surrounded by the fire hose bombarding us daily with information on every single social media and television platform that it's almost impossible to not get caught up in the fear and the paradigms and really just the falseness. With AI, we don't even know what's real or what's not real. I know I'm real, but do I really? And in this platform, you could be a robot on the other side. I'd have no idea, except I don't think a robot would have an itch and need to scratch it.
There's so much to unpack there because what's interesting is we'll talk about the organizational aspect in like governments and bureaucracies and these things I would say change is kind of the antithesis of an organization or traditional organizations. Moving on is this, I love this idea of the universe because like I said, it culminates in it's a crisis. Like if you procrastinate what the universe is trying to do, it's usually going to come back and kick you on your ass. So how do you reconcile this thing? So here in the West, we've got status, we got ego, we got to run the rat race. It's our income, it's our net worth. The kind of Europe and other countries, they don't really value those types of things. And how do you reconcile this need to be more, do more, have more versus the basically boiling it down to value and letting go. I find that if you actually just let go, kind of that allows the universe to work, whereas if you're trying to just kind of you're just hindering yourself. So how do you address that?
It's such a tight balance. In this world, we need money to live, right? You have to pay, for shelter and for food and clothing and all. So it's not like you can actually just live without that desire to have an income. And for me, it really just comes down to, I remember that day clearly. It was, fall of 2014, and I was hanging on out of pride and spite and ego. And the biggest thing was accepting that for me, there was no way forward financially. I had to declare bankruptcy in order to focus on my health. And so that's, we're almost 10 years ago now, where that letting go moment, the universe from that moment on continued to provide. And I never needed to want for more. It wasn't necessarily on my time or my schedule, but it was always divine timing and the universe's schedule, right? The money always showed up at the 24th hour. And I do think there's a lot of organizations out there that yes, a lot of organizations that are refusing to change, that are stuck, they don't last very long. They usually end up disappearing. Where the organizations that are continually evolving and continually adapting, and really, they're the ones that are almost pushing the envelope towards what is next. You know, when I think about 20 years ago was my first BlackBerry. And 30 years ago, nobody would have ever even thought that we would have something in our hands as powerful as a computer that would take up the entire building, that allows us to communicate around the world. You know, you and I did not ask for this technology, but those companies created it and convinced us that we needed it. And at the same time, although it's tough to understand that, I do believe that the universe is very similar. The universe is always going to give us what we need, and usually we don't even know we need it until we can look back 10 years later and say, oh, I see how A led to B, led to C, led to D, and now here I am. And I really like where I am. There are a lot of individuals that discover this early in life, but unfortunately, and I'm sure you know many, there's also unfortunately way too many people that discover this way too late. And there's a German proverb that we grow too old, or we grow too old too soon, and too smart too late.
Mm.
And that really is the human ego getting in the way and preventing us from all just accepting whatever it is we need to accept.
That's so well said. It's I think what you're describing is this idea of a midlife crisis. Now they have quarter life crises, and it's very interesting because back in 2008 when I gave up my medical career, I was the same thing. I was just holding on, and ego and status, and trying to please my parents, and then the universe is saying let go, let go, let go, and then there's these little inklings saying I will provide for you. You have everything you need. You don't need to run this crazy rat race that you're in, and it's so powerful. So kind of talking about organizations, you talked about organizations not surviving. However, I mean, you look at it. I think there was a statistic like a lot of corporations, like, a majority of corporations are zombie corporations. And it's like you keep hiring and promoting the same incompetent individuals, keeping these corporations alive, and they're just like sucking value. And you have like governments that just refuse to change. And, so I mean, honestly, it's like you're supposed to change, but organizations, they don't change, but they're like fighting to stay alive, and then that leads to corruption and fraud and all of that. So I mean, what's the answer? Like, I mean, look at our governments, it's just kind of it's a joke these days. So how do you reconcile that?
I read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged about 15 years ago, and I recommend the book to anyone that is struggling with that reconciliation of being in a world where around you is nothing but lies and deceit and corruption and incompetence. And in Atlas Shrugged, the main premise, the main character of the story, John Galt, again, is one of those individuals that tried to make change, realized he was banging his head against the wall, created a utopian culture, and in essence gave up and let the world implode upon itself. And although that's really difficult to do, I do recommend it, because the less attention you pay to what is going on around you, the more energy you have for yourself.
Mm.
And whether it's there's so many individuals now that they're their energy is being sucked away by the various scandals that have nothing to do with them, that have no bearing on their day-to-day life, but they're giving away all of their energy.
Mm.
And, it is one where, especially in this world, I find that the more effort I give to protecting my energy
Mm.
and keeping my energy towards the people and the things that I love, well, that energy tends to grow. And the more that I, put a barrier around myself and the external circumstances,
Mm.
the more people that I tend to meet that are filled with love, that are filled with joy and enthusiasm.
Mm.
And at times it does feel like there aren't very many people like that in the world. But then the more you focus inward, the more those people will find you.
Really interesting. We could go on more. I love this idea where you're creating boundaries, and then that way you're healing yourself, allowing you to, I've heard this from people, that keep repeating the same bad habits, like broken relationships, attracting the wrong partners, getting into the wrong business relationships. And so when you protect your energy, my question is, you say you focus your energy on, kind of, protecting your energy. However, like, I mean, for example, you've got taxes and inflation, and you have to actually address these things because if you don't do the necessary things to, kind of hedge against these bad policies, you're going to be affected. So, I find more and more attention is directed towards that. But what are your thoughts on reconciling this? Like, I mean, you can't just completely ignore it because then you're in, so how do you reconcile that?
Again, it's a very difficult, fine line between being uh, in this world and being of this world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I have a spreadsheet that tracks every single cent that I make and that I spend. And I run my personal world like a corporation, right? Like my personal finances like a corporation is I want to
Mm-hmm.
see that ledger. I want to see the profit and loss. I want to see the balance sheet. And, so for instance, if I know that taxes are going to go up every year, and, in our community, they hit us with a special levy, and then there's another, extra on top of that to pay for this large project that they're building. Well, then I pull from other areas because, the only choice I have is I can't make the choice to not pay tax. The only choice I would have is I could move, and I could move to an area that has a lower tax base. But the truth is then I have to think about, well, how much further am I commuting? How much, what are the other implications? And what's to say that the property taxes are in there are not going to continue to go up?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, or I look at, okay, well, if expenses are going up, then I need to increase the income as a result of it. And those are the things that I have control over. So when I protect my energy, I focus on, what do I have control over? Is me going and sitting in front of City Hall protesting going to make a change? It's not. It really, truly isn't. And what I love, there's an economist. So she was born and raised in South Africa and then educated in England. Denisha Demboyo, and I probably totally wrecked her name. But I remember listening to her at a conference. I think it was actually in San Diego a number of years ago. And she made the comment about autocratic versus democratic countries. And she said, to a room of 5,000 financial people, the problem in a democratic country, the problem with a democratic government is they spend 4 years trying to get elected, and then they spend 4 years trying to get reelected with no regard for the future. Mm-hmm. Where in an autocratic country, they don't care about elections. They're focused on their family and the future generations. And so you're going to have a lot of economic policies in autocratic countries that are actually much smarter and much more thought out than in a democratic country. Because all you end up doing, and you know, in Canada, we're in a complete disarray. Obviously in America, not much better.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've had 8 years of ridiculous spending. And now all of a sudden, hopefully in the next year, there'll be an election and the next party will come in and they'll be like, oh, well, Canada's bankrupt. We now need to get the money from somewhere. But where are you going to get the money from? Well, it has to come from the people. And is that something I can control? Well, you know, I could move to Costa Rica, or maybe Ireland, which is currently the number one country in the European Union. Or I can just deal with it here and not worry about it, not worry about my energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Really fascinating. And really, we could talk about this. So how can people find you and follow you and reach out to you? I love this discussion about change and how it applies to organizations if they wanted to reach out to you.
So I'm on the intraweb, kevintcahill.com. I'm on all the major social media platforms as well. I have a series of 4 books. My last books that I released, it's a complete workbook set on the process of change, and it guides individuals through the 4 parts of change. How do you prepare for change? How do you go through suffering? How do you learn to accept joy out of suffering? And then how do you mature and serve to ensure that you don't have to go back into that suffering again?
I love that. And I really enjoyed this talk. And for all the audience, be sure to give Kevin's socials a like and follow and reach out to him. And I really enjoyed talking with you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, absolute pleasure to meet you, Christopher. It was a great conversation. I look forward to more connections in the future.